Hi everyone. One of the most common requests I'm getting at the moment is how I managed to make my Earth rotate on my Digital Nebula homepage. Now this is only a feature that works in WebKit browsers, so that's Chrome and Safari. It doesn't work in Firefox and IE, so when you're producing these effects, just bear that in mind. Hopefully it will be supported by IE and Firefox in the future. But they are CSS3 features, a bit like border radius and gradients. They do look really cool though, so I'm trying to read up on them and implement them as much as possible. So I'm making my sites look as good as they possibly can. This is mostly actually the redevelopment of my site, which I did about 2 months ago. It was actually mostly so that I can have a play around with CSS3. All this border radius here and all these gradients, they're all produced by CSS. So it was really an experimentation of CSS3, what it can do. But anyway, I will get on. What I've done, I've produced a new document, which is the Earth and the Moon. And this is looking kind of weird at the moment because it's a square div. But I have actually just put a border radius on there. Just wanted to show you what border radius can do. If I refresh, what I've done, you can see the div that is the outline for the moon. So this one just here, that div, I've actually gone and put a border radius on there. So if I go and show you, refresh and show you what that looks like. It helps if I save the CSS file, doesn't it? Save and refresh. You can see it now looks like an orbit path. So these are really cool features of CSS that I'm really excited for. I just hope that they are implemented as soon as possible by Firefox and Internet Explorer. So anyway, Earth and Moon, and obviously when you've got the Moon, what does it do around the Earth? It orbits. So we're going to rotate the Moon. Now, I'll just briefly explain the div setup here. This is mainly for people who understand CSS. If not, go and read up on CSS positioning and come back and you'll hopefully understand a bit more. But this Earth div, this is a 256 by 256 div, which is positioned relatively with auto margin either side, obviously to center it, and a margin 250 sorry, at the top. Overflow is set to visible so that you can see anything that's positioned inside it, but it runs outside of the div. We then have positioned within that div, in the HTML at least, we then have this moon container div, which is absolutely positioned, and it's positioned so that it's centered around the div. And then we have the moon div, which is centered in the absolute, positioned absolutely, and centered on this div by sort of shifting it across, and then it's got a minus top value so that it is positioned again overflowing this div, which is visible. Yeah, overflow set to visible. The main reason is, I'll go ahead and explain it. If I set this to relative, it wouldn't position correctly with regards to the Earth. It would be very difficult to position it. If I wanted to change the position of this planet set, all I have to do is change the margins of the Earth, and the Moon will follow. Right? The Moon is positioned inside this div because I'm going to be rotating both the Moon and the orbit path. So the Moon needs to be attached to the orbit path in order to circle round. It will become obvious when I go and apply the rotation. So I'll go and briefly show you the HTML and CSS. HTML is really simple. We've got a div called Earth, a div called Moon Container, which is the orbit path, and a div called Moon. Moon Container is within the Earth, so that whenever we move the Earth, the whole set moves with it. And the Moon is within the Moon Container. This is relative, this is absolute, this is absolute. There's the CSS files. You can see Earth, relative, size, there's the margins, background image obviously, and overflow set to visible. Moon Container, absolute, positioned to center it, width, border is set to 2 pixels solid, and then I've just put a border radius on there as you saw. Now, here's the cool bit. What we're going to do is set rotation using the CSS3 transform function. Okay, so something sort of new to any CSS users at the now is the ability to set a CSS function. I've commented these out. You can see I'm going to uncomment this one. So this is for rotating the moon and the orbit path together, so that it all orbits around the Earth. Okay, it's technically only going to move the orbit path, but because the moon is positioned within orbit path, it is carried with the orbit path when you rotate it. Okay, so we set a the function you're going to use is Keyframes, which sets a not entirely sure how the syntax works, but this is how it does work. So you set what sort of function you're going to be using the @ symbol just there. You then name the function, and then you set the properties. Okay, and the properties are from and to. If you're going to want to move like linear rather than rotation, you'd then set, you know, a value, a pixel value, and then the to pixel value. So from 100 pixels to 200 pixels. Yeah. But we're going with rotation and we're going with degrees. So we're setting from 0 degrees to 360 degrees. So it goes clockwise. Okay. So from 0 at the top all the way around to 360. Okay. So we set the function there, we set the from and the to animation function here, just here. Then in the moon container, whatever CSS class or ID you want to set this animation on, you can then call the animation by saying webkit animation name, so these four properties here, webkit animation name, moon orbit, which is the name of the function we set just here. We're then setting the iteration count, which is infinite. You can set it 1 time, 2 times, etc., etc. Webkit animation timing function, which is I forget what that means. I'm just setting it to linear. I believe it's so that you can set easing on it. And then you have the duration. 10 seconds is quite quick, so it means it takes 10 seconds for the moon to orbit the entire Earth. Okay, if I set that to like 500 seconds, it would be really, really freaking slow. But anyway, I'll show you how this looks. So, just to recap, we have set animation from and to, set the name just there, set from 0 degrees to 360 degrees, went and called it in to the moon container. It's going on infinitely. I think that's again easing, but you can look that up, just Google it. And set the duration to 10 seconds. So we'll save that out and we'll go and refresh and see what happens. Boom. Perfect, and that's CSS. No JavaScript involved. And you can see that's moving the moon container div, which has the orbit path on it. And that, of course, the moon is positioned absolutely within that div, so it's moving with that div. Now, I know the moon has an orbit, which means it's got one side that's always facing the Earth, geostationary. However, for effect, I'm going to rotate the moon the other way at exactly the same timings, so that this shadow underneath the moon stays as if it is lying on a surface, because to me that just doesn't look right. So I've gone and set another animation down here. A similar sort of deal as above here, so I'm just going to unquote this. WebKit keyframes moon rotate, I've called this, so it's applied to the actual moon, and it's from 360 to 0. So from 360 to 0, so it's going anti-clockwise. Okay, and again with the moon div, I'm just going to uncomment this. Same deal. We're calling it in moon rotate, setting how long it's going to last. Again, I believe that's easing, and setting how long it's going to take. Okay, 10 seconds, 10 seconds. So let's go and refresh. Did I save? No, I didn't save the style. That'll be why. Refresh, and there we go. Shadow staying on the bottom. Okay. Now, certain moons of certain planets have a habit of rotating faster than the Earth. For instance, the Earth turns round 365 times compared how many times it goes compared to how many times it goes around the Sun. So let's set the moon to go round, turn to moon to rotate faster than its orbit. So I'll set the duration to 5 seconds rather than 10. So hopefully it should rotate twice every time it goes around the moon. So sorry, let's just save that CSS, refresh, and there we go. It's tumbling. It's rotating faster than it's orbiting. And that pretty much is how to rotate objects with CSS. I am planning on doing some videos on other CSS things aside from Adobe Edge. So if anyone's got any requests on how to do certain CSS techniques, anything they've seen on Digital Nebula or otherwise, so if they've seen anything on Apple homepage, which tends to be quite a good place to go if you need any CSS inspiration, let me know and I'll see if I can do a tutorial on it. I'm planning on doing some, I'll do an actual announcement about it, but I'm planning on doing some suggestion videos in terms of copying or some cool effects that you see on other sites. So for instance, on apple.com, maybe you want to know how to do, I don't know, these rollovers here in CSS down the bottom, or you want to know how to fade in and out the news headlines, that sort of thing. Just hit up a request and oh, actually, this is quite cool. When you click here, oh yeah, the search button, the search bar transforms. I believe that's JavaScript, but I'd explore it and then I'd show you guys how to do it. So again, if you have a request, PM me or email me, and I'll see if I can get it done. Anyway, thanks for the subscribers, guys. That's really cool. If you fancy liking it or subscribing, that'd be great. Yeah, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.